Hello everyone, this is Darren's Brainwaves, and today I just wanted to go over what happened with me and what you can do about it. So you just found out you are gluten-free. You can't have any gluten, you get sick, or you've had a study done and you found out that you have celiac disease. And it's a real big change. It's truly is a life-changing thing. We're going to discuss how you can get from being just a normal human that can eat just about everything to become gluten-free. What are some of the reasons that that's happening, as well as what you can do about it. It is possible to heal your body and be able to eat gluten again. But we'll just be discussing all of that. So when I was about, I think, 18 or 19, I was going to be making a trip to England to be there with see some friends, as well as I was going to be doing some training there in England for several months and then traveling abroad. And to go there, I was going to also be working some with kids, and the government required that I had a hepatitis A vaccine, I believe it was. And I really am not huge into vaccines because I had had reactions to them in the past. Certain ones that were just, standard vaccines, I had completely broken out sick for days. And so I got where I really wasn't looking forward to that. So went to the pharmacy, got the vaccine, and after that, I started noticing that I did not feel nearly as well. Just like my overall health just didn't feel as well. And then I started noticing anytime I would eat like bread or pasta or noodles or all of that, I started getting where I'd start feeling bloated and getting a lot of diarrhea and stuff from it. And it took me a couple of years to really realize what was fully going on. And it got to a point where I was having a lot of abdominal pain, a lot of stomach pain, nauseous all the time, very commonly wake up in the morning really nauseous. You go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have gastritis. They did all kinds of ultrasounds and endoscopes and all this stuff, and they're just like, well, you're gonna just live with it. And so it came to a point where they never diagnosed me with not being able to have gluten. I figured it out on my own. I started getting like where when I'd eat something with wheat in it, I would literally get chills and fevers, and of course diarrhea, and everything I ate seemed to bother me, but it turns out it was mainly the gluten stuff. And reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna completely cut this out and see what happens. And so I cut gluten out completely, and I was pretty much cured. And so I was like, okay, I see. And so then I started doing a lot more research, and it took me a while to remember back and see where was it that it started happening from. And it turns out, like I said, it was the vaccine almost for sure. And even just recently now, one of my friends here, they had vaccine mandates put in place where you couldn't go into stores or go to the banks and all that if you didn't get this, so to speak, vaccine that really didn't work. But right after getting the vaccine within a week, became fully, couldn't have gluten, like got tested, and has celiac disease now from the COVID vaccine. I held out. I was like, I ain't getting this vaccine. I ain't crazy. I already know what these things do. There's several other people I know that died from them, like within hours or minutes, and just way too many for comfort's sake. So anyway, he got that, and there's just so many people now. It is just everywhere that people are becoming gluten intolerant, gluten free, And you're like, so what's going on? So when you do your research, you'll come to find out that the wheat crops now are, before they harvest, they spray the entire field with glyphosate, or pretty much Roundup, and they kill all of the wheat plants with the glyphosate. And what that does is it allows the plants to dry in the field, and it uses less energy. It makes it easier to harvest, and they get higher yields, and it just works out really well for the farmers. In the studies that have been done by the companies that make the glyphosate, as well as the same companies pretty much make the seeds, hybridize the seeds, as well as one of the interesting things is they say a lot of the actual gluten in wheat is in the root of the wheat, and they've hybridized the wheat to be shorter and shorter so that less of it would get knocked over in storms, and it would also take less time to grow. But hence doing that has caused the wheat to have a lot more gluten in it, and so they've changed it so much that it's no longer it's becoming inedible to a lot of humans. Is part of the problem, as well as the hybridization is making it less nutritious, as well as just continuously farming the same fields, and chemical fertilizers can only do so much to actually get micronutrition in your food. So often, if you're to use a store-bought-in fertilizer, it will give you like the key things, like you can have your different nitrates like the potassium and calcium and a lot of these different fertilizers to change what is in the ground and what the plant has to work with, and hence they can give what they call nutritious food that meets the specification. But some of the practices of farming like that do have inherent problems in that the plow depths, they can get really compacted, the earth under a certain depth from the weight of these really heavy tractors, and the plows only plow a certain depths up, so it can really get used up a lot, the topsoil, like what's in it, as well as there isn't like the trees that pull up nutrients from way deeper into the ground and then drop their leaves and spread them. So some of the farms, of course, have better practices than others, but that is definitely a problem. I found when I was in Albania, it was interesting, when I was there, they produce like all their own wheat there in Albania, and they don't use the glyphosate in the seed variety. It seems is more longer term seed. It's not been hybridized as much, and people that cannot eat gluten other places, like cannot touch it, cannot have bread or any of that, can eat as much bread and pasta and wheat as they like. And several people have told me that have been to Italy that the same thing, they can have as much pasta and bread and all that as they like, but they can't in America and a lot of the rest of the world. So it turns out there is some companies that do sell wheat that is the original like wheat type that's been being grown for thousands of years, and they also are not spraying it with glyphosate or the other stuff. It's all organic and natural. A lot of people find that that's perfectly fine and they can eat that. Now, if you've just discovered that like this is why you've been sick for so long is the wheat, you might have to spend a year or so recuperating before you're able to eat it again. And a lot of people have found that they can now eat wheat, but they just choose to only eat stuff that hasn't been sprayed with poison and hasn't been hybridized, which can make a huge difference. I tested like 3-4 months after realizing that I was gluten free. I bought some of it and started baking with it. It still slightly bothered me. It was way better than normal stuff. but I wasn't quite healed yet. And so then I started doing a lot more research into essentially deep nutrition, like what is actually healthy, what is actually nutritious, because the governments around the world have been either misled or intentionally like telling us lies about what they think you should eat. It is very interesting how like the influence of governments and all of saying like, okay, this is a normal diet, mainly carbohydrates and grains and all this stuff. A lot of that's due to what was cheap and easy to grow, and potentially what some doctors at the time thought were the right way to do things. But it turns out that for the most part, you want to eat things that have been grown and done for thousands of years, at least hundreds of years. And right now, we've, in the last 100 years, have had a humongous change to food. One of the things that's really changed is the oil. Oil has become highly processed, and a lot of the vegetable oils and all have been bleached. Is one of the things, as well as lots of other really harsh chemicals to shock the oil to come out of like the pack, and hence it is not really fit for human consumption, but it's very cheap and people love cheap, and so that is what they constantly eat, and that is one of the biggest killers right there. If you can do anything to change your health, I highly recommend cutting out all processed oils. One, that eliminates like all your junk foods, because like all the junk foods have the highly processed oil. That's one of the reasons they're so bad. That isn't the entire reason. But by choosing to not have anything with the highly processed oils, your health will be so much better. So you can stick to things like olive oil. Be careful, because some of the labels will say olive oil and actually be like doctored up with some highly processed chemical oils, and even some of the olive oils have been like, really shocked as chemicals to get like more of the oil out, so you might want like your virgin olive oils. As well as coconut oils can be amazing, and there's things like grapeseed oil and some of that, as long as they're like cold pressed or things like that, naturally gotten oils, as well as really good sources like beef tallow. Some people are into lard. I'm not a big pork fan because I've seen what pigs eat. They eat anything you feed them, essentially. And yeah, I'm not into that very much. Anyway, we'll just stay out of the pork thing. And then another thing is, so many of the animals right now, people will tell you chicken's healthy. Well, chickens are healthy if the chicken eats healthily, but at the moment most chickens are being fed chemicals, hormones, and mainly highly chemicalized, sprayed with glyphosate, corns and products that you really, if you're gluten free, it's because your body can't handle that. And what the chicken's eating is things that you can't be eating, really, and you shouldn't be eating. There just isn't the nutrition or the health there. So I can recommend, don't eat chicken unless it's organic and like pasture raised. The same with eggs. You want like pasture raised eggs, stuff that are like truly how it's meant to be. Also, take in mind that a lot of fruits and vegetables have been just grown with like entirely chemicals. Like one of my friends has a greenhouse, and they raise the normal huge bell red peppers and yellow peppers and green peppers, and they'd export them to the United States. And he invited us to come see his greenhouse, and so we went and saw it, and they would use just gravel in these long grow beds. They'd have like these plastic bags that would hold gravel with burnt rice straw and I think a little sand. And they use burnt rice straw so there'd be like no trace of like any bacterias or bugs or things that could damage the peppers. And then they would, like 3 times a week, they would test the soil, the medium that the plants grew in, and they would just pour hundreds and hundreds of pounds of all the different fertilizers into giant vats of water, and they would just pump the fertilizers through it. And so essentially, and then of course the green peppers were under a covered roof so they couldn't get rainwater, because that was apparently a problem. You might get spots or bugs if you had it open. And so hence your supposedly healthy green peppers, red peppers, bell peppers, all that, for the most part, are just grown with fertilizer, like entirely. Like they don't even have soil. There is no soil. And so much of the food nowadays does not hold the nutrition and things you need. And hence it's important to eat things that do. A lot of beef that's grass-fed is amazing source of food, as well as they're an extremely useful animal in that the leather is so useful for shoes and car seats and all kinds of things, as well as the bones. Having a lot of bone broth will help your bones to be strong, as well as your nails and hair and your skin. Having a lot of bone broth in your diet, especially from healthy animals, really does make a huge difference in health. But one of the things that made a really big difference to me after I started realizing how much of the food is becoming inedible to a lot of humans is getting a freeze dryer. I have a Harvest Right freeze dryer, and I've been growing huge amounts of food in my own garden. And I do a lot of yucca here in the tropics. It takes almost no work besides pulling it out of the ground when you're harvesting it. Peel it and then grind it up and then freeze dry it, and it makes a flour that is very, very, very close to normal flour, and it's all natural and not sprayed with anything, all organic, and that's made a huge difference, as well as making sweet potato flour, using coconut flour, and I found a blend of those can do well. Rice is obviously grown in huge quantity and all, and with often not the best farm practices, but it does tend to still be one of the foods that most of the world eats and has been eating for a long time, but also tends to not bother very many people's allergies. But I do have a tip. When you look at how rice is processed, you'll find that they spray it with vitamins that supposedly keep you healthy, but in my experience and what I've seen all over the world, that's it doesn't really work. What they spray it with actually is more likely to make you sick and not feel as well. I did experiment for a good while. I know it's subjective, but I thought for a while when I was younger, like, oh, it must be better not to wash the rice because, like, they're intending you to have these good vitamins and you're washing them off. And didn't feel nearly as well after eating rice for weeks that was not washed. So scrub your rice really well to try to get off any molds or other things from just the processing, but also hopefully you can wash off some of the supposed vitamins they spray on the rice that you should be finding in other things that you eat. So yeah, wash it really well. Some of that gets, I think, baked into it when they dry it, but oh well, it helps. Um, but yeah, you can definitely learn to bake everything. I've been learning to do cookies and apple pies and lemon meringue pies and certain breads and muffins and all kinds of things with alternative flour. And once you get a knack for it, it can be just as good, if not better. So yeah, it is really challenging when you first find out that you can't have any more wheat. I think in a while I'll probably be well enough to be able to eat non-glyphosated and not hybridized wheat, and we'll see how that goes. I might make an update video on that when I do more experiments on that. There's so many variables, it's hard to pinpoint what is the culprits. Obviously there's going to be some people that are like, yeah, vaccines have nothing to do with it. I can only speak from my experience and what I know, and I can imagine there's plenty of other ways, just simply because they're spraying it with things that can kill the plant, and obviously they say it won't kill you. Oh, it's harmless to humans. And some people also point out that it might be harmless to humans, but a lot of people say it kills bacteria in your gut that allows you to digest it correctly. And also it can cause a lot of like little holes in your intestines, which start allowing the gluten and toxins and stuff to get right into your bloodstream, and that's one of the things that causes like the celiacs or the gluten intolerant stuff. So anyway, you can heal your stomach as well with natural things. One of the really great ways to heal your stomach, I was diagnosed for a long time with gastritis, and when you go into third world countries and you talk to the natives all around, you'll find remedies for just about anything. You just have to be willing to talk to the people in their 80s and 90s and become their friends, and you'll learn wells of information of ways that actually work. Of course, some of them are a little bit superstitious and all, but there are some that do work. And one of the ones that does work really well is just aloe vera. There is quite a few varieties of aloe vera, and not all aloe vera is, of course, processed the same, but if you source the right aloe vera, really good stuff, blend it up. Of course, make sure you get rid of the sap that causes you to poop. What do they call that stuff? As a laxative. The sap on aloe vera is a laxative. So you want to make sure you get that out unless you're constipated, which you shouldn't be if you're eating well. And so, or unless you've had a surgery and they put you on anesthesia or oxycodone or some of those. Yeah, those are rough. Anyway, and so, yeah, aloe vera can heal gastritis, but the main thing you can do is to change your diet. Also, a lot of people say avocado seeds boiled. There also apparently is a small amount of cyanide in them, so I was like, pick your poison. I don't know. I didn't do that one as much, but I've had quite a few people tell me they cured their gastritis with avocado seeds boiled, but you might want to do some more research before trying that. As well as there's just some really good things in small quantities, cinnamon, ginger, all those just stomach remedy stuff that can be of help to help soothe the stomach. But yeah, changing your diet can completely change your life. I have felt incredible since I dropped out the gluten and the highly processed oils, and mainly I'm eating organically grown food and eating a lot of beef and a lot of beef bone broth, and that really makes a big difference, using beef tallow and eating lots of chocolate. Chocolate can be amazing. We have a chocolate farm actually, and we do all organic chocolate, and it's kind of fun to be able to eat a very good product. Also, to mention is fermented foods. It's extremely important to have a lot of fermented things. Bacteria is your friend if it's the right kind, and we'll die without it. And it's interesting how so many things can kill off your gut bacteria. Drinking tap water where they put chlorine and some of that in it can be problematic. So I'd recommend if you're in America, at least boil your water. You drink a lot of tea. PG tips. My boy, when I was in England, really got into tea. There's a lot of things you can do. If you guys have any more questions of things that you haven't figured out yet, or would like to know more about, or if you've come across things that have worked really well for you, I would love to hear about that. But I just want you to feel that there is like hope at the end of the tunnel. Like, it can feel very overwhelming, but right now I'm actually very happy because like I'm thinking more clearly, stronger, I'm healthier, my skin's better, hair is better, like everything is improved, and it's a real blessing. It took time, and it was a little overwhelming for a while, how big of a radical change it is. But yeah, it's definitely doable, and once you've achieved it, and once you've done it, you start realizing everyone probably should move more in that direction, and try to drop the poisons out of your diet. It can be a great idea. So you guys have a great one. I hope this is helpful, and sorry it took so long talking. You guys have a good one. Bye.